Yeah, loads came out in the last. The deep dive was really good, and then more information happened, and now I've got all the questions in the world for you, if that's okay.
I'm sure you do. Yeah, this has been a whirlwind week for us sharing all this information about Alpha through the deep dive, through the Q&A, and then folks like yourself getting into hop in and play, and soon lots and lots more people hopping in through Alpha and Beta. So really excited to talk about Midnight with you.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so we had a good chat game, Sky, but now we've got to try it, and I got to play it. Let's talk about add-ons a little bit, because I had a lot of people distressed and coming to talk to me after the alpha was going on. We had an interview with one of the DBM mods guys.
Mhm.
This seems like you're not quite sure exactly what you're taking away yet, but you've gone and taken everything away, and then going to see over the course of the alpha what people are saying. I really need this, and then going to bring it in. Is that kind of the approach?
Yeah, so I'm not the most technical person to talk about the specific calls in the API, which are disabled currently in alpha. But we've been working pretty closely, and our UI engineering team in particular has been working pretty closely with add-on authors to make sure that that is clear and understood. And generally, what that information is being cut out is real-time understanding of combat information. So that's presence of auras, of applications of auras, damage, things like that, or what add-ons will no longer have direct access to, such that they can perform calculations on them to in cases trivialize encounters or make changes to rotations. And so this is going to be a continuing conversation with add-on authors as we move through alpha, and one of the reasons why we've invited a lot of add-on authors to be able to come in.
Okay. So you're not super sure on what's going to go away, but the main focus has been from our feedback is reskinning. Do you know what the philosophy is internal with that? It's like, you've created this mod, it shows certain information. We're not going to give you more than that, but I'd just like to change how it looks.
Yeah. So we do have some new tech that our UI engineers have been working on to make reskinning and the way that information is presented possible without the having direct access to that information. We call it sort of secret info or secret numbers. Ian described it as a black box, I think, yesterday in the Q&A, where information is presented to the UI in this sealed box, and then your UI can change it. You can grow it, turn it yellow, turn it pink, whatever you want to do, change the order of things, and change the presentation of information. What it can't do is do calculations based on the number inside of whatever that is inside that box. And so this should allow things like reskinning and visual customization to be possible for add-on authors and players who use add-ons.
Fantastic. So we're looking that cosmetically, even though we're using your information provide, we can make it look how we want it to be.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, that's superb, because that was very worrying. So we're like, I don't like this icon to be in this way.
Yeah, and then of course this is not simply changes to the API and that's it. There's also a tremendous amount of work that UI designers, artists, and engineers have been working on to make sure that we are providing all that information directly or through secret info, so that the add-ons can have the information that they need to be able to give folks the information that they need to be able to play their class, to be able to understand information in raid frames, understand information in nameplates, etc.
Okay, well, that kind of moves us on to the simplification process we saw recently. Big post came out for you guys. Lots of class changes going through. Is this something that you've pulled from data from the one button coming in? Like, has there been an increased success rate? Maybe things are more complicated than we originally thought? Or has this been in the works for a while?
We think about the one button rotation and the approachability efforts that go into Midnight as almost two separate things. The one button rotation has been more for just folks who prefer to play the game that way. We've heard feedback from a lot of folks who like that. One of the things that they want to do is move around the world, play through quests, explore the world of Azeroth, but the rotations or the ability to play their class to a level which feels acceptable was daunting, and this just made it a lot less stressful to be able to have to get over that hump to learn that. And so that is sort of one one aspect. The approachability efforts that are going into Midnight are focused on a number of different other reasons, some of which are tied to the changes that are made with add-ons, that where we are making sure that we're addressing any abilities which made players feel like they needed to have add-ons. A good example is Outlaw
Yeah,
Roll the
roll the
Bones,
bones.
where, yep, exactly, where there's some complex mathematics behind the scenes that was required to be able to play optimally. It was not, while you're in the middle of combat, trying to dodge pools of fire, trying to perform the rest of your rotation to understand, should I reroll now? Should I keep the buffs that I have? And so abilities like that will be redesigned compensatorily to make sure that it doesn't feel like you need to have this additional calculated information to be able to play your class. And so these are the types of changes that are going into the class changes and our approachability approach.
I mean, obviously, a lot of people are fearful that when we see posts like this, oh, you're going to make the game very, very easy to play. But that's not the intention.
Absolutely not. No, we still, the goal here is more to raise the floor so that we can make sure that it is easier for folks to be able to get into a new class to understand the rotation, but there should still be plenty of opportunities for skill expression, plenty of opportunities for players who have been playing hard, playing a lot, playing at high level to be able to express their skill over others and to have a good time doing so. And this is one of the big reasons that we do tend to have an alpha at the point where we have it now, is because we're just at the point where we're able to test pretty much all of our specs at a level where they are able to to understand the intent behind most of these changes, and then we can continue to gather feedback. And so I know myself and a whole bunch of people on our team are actively looking around and seeing folks' feedback to how is this feeling? Does this feel, do we hit the mark in terms of making this class feel a little bit more approachable? Are there places where we went too far? In respect to the fear that you brought up there, that like did this take the class and sort of in approachability simplify some of the fun out of the play style? And if we hear that feedback, then we continue to iterate.
Oh, that's really good. So we're looking to get as many people as possible to get this feedback going, because historically speaking, it's been very difficult to be agile in this environment. A lot of things have been set in stone, hard to swap them. But one of the things Ian brought up at Gamescom is that you've modified the communication and creation process now to allow you to be much more flexible here. Is this where we're going to see that example?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have plenty of systems within sort of the org here that we can get feedback from players. We're getting bug reports through QA that we're able to address things that are just straight up bugged, but also get feedback from folks about how classes are playing or how a zone's quest line is playing, how one of the new features, once people start play testing Prey or as they're working with housing, we're seeing a tremendous amount of feedback on housing now on well, just cool things that people are making on one side, but also people saying like, hey, this tool could be better if it worked this particular way. And so this is all already coming in, with alpha having been open for just about 24 hours now.
Well, that's good. I wanted to ask you actually, personally, now you're in charge of Midnight. You're traditionally known for coming up with really creative, really interesting piece of content that's a little outside the norm. But Ian also brought up there's a parity element as different teams are making a different expansions. Have you been able to put yourself into Midnight? Like your creative touches? Or have you been hands off?
Well, of course, it takes a Blizzard to make a Blizzard game. And so there's a whole bunch of people who are putting all sorts of creative efforts into what's going into Midnight. I might push back a little bit on parity and what Ian said there. I think that we do want to make sure that we know what an expansion is and sort of the expected. You're going to get this, raids, and you're going to get seasons, and you're going to get dungeons and whatnot. But there's sort of that mantra of if it ain't broke, don't fix it doesn't necessarily apply to WoW expansions. That like we do want to make sure that we're providing novel experiences. We want to make sure that each expansion feels different or has something to. It shouldn't just feel like a new coat of paint over the same tried and true formula. And this is proven true time and time again. We want to make sure that we're doing new things. So things that I think were important to me, and when it came to building out Midnight Story, one of them was the nonlinear flow of the zones.
Mm-hmm.
We saw an opportunity to do so. Not every expansion has to be nonlinear, but there was a really good opportunity for us to do so in Midnight when we built these the zones that we built. Also, sort of trying to break the structure of a campaign chapter is a zone and a zone is a campaign chapter with the Eretor's Journey. This was also something that we worked closely with, Chris Metzen and the creative team to start to build the structure of this expansion and say like, hey, let's not just say that the old world is for going back to and visiting with nostalgia and nostalgia alone, but we can use the old world for our actual like story moving forward. And so that Eretor's Journey does take place in places like Stratholme and places like Black Rock Mountain. And so these are a couple of the areas that I wanted to put a little bit of extra creativity that was important to me into this. Prey is also another feature which I'm really excited to see people playing with, just because it seemed like a fun thing to do, to
Is it your
hunt
idea?
someone and also have them hunting you. Well, again, takes a team. So I'll say this started as something that came out of my desk. Sure, like this was
Yep.
looking at like what are some things that we can do that that make the outdoor world more interesting. And we looked at delves, how Zekvir, Underpin, Kaiveza can show up every once in a while, and that's an exciting moment. You look at games like Diablo 3 or Diablo 4 where the butcher will show up, and that's like, oh shoot, I need to do something to like it. Can we engineer more moments like that? And there was a cool story opportunity to do so based on the nature of the elves and Silver Moon, where they're sort of high and regal, but they've also got this skeezy underbelly where there's murder row and there's all sorts of underhanded dealings that have always been going on and continue to go on even now in modern Azeroth. They're like, we can build this cool prey system. So that was sort of the starting assignment. The team and the people who are building the quests and the underpinnings of the system beneath, or who came back and said like, hey, this is actually an opportunity to add some additional difficulty to the outdoor world. That was never part of the assignment. That was sort of like a cool opportunity that they discovered. And arguably, I would say the more exciting part of Prey now is that this is a way, when you get to hard mode and nightmare mode, to take your adventures through Zulaman, your adventures through Harandar or whatnot, and make those something which is actually going to keep you a little bit more on your toes, if that's your thing. And of course, a lot of folks, if you just want to go herb and pick herbs, do mining or whatever, you don't have to opt into that difficulty. But if you want a little bit more challenge and a little bit more reward in outdoor gameplay, Prey is actually a pretty interesting backdoor way into doing that.
So how does that work with the other teams that are working on like Last Titan? You made Prey, and your team's come up with this, and it's really successful. Is that then ported to Last Titan? Is that able to be done? Or is it not going to fall under the Evergreen territory?
It depends. This is the type of thing that we wait and see. You're not necessarily gonna see Prey in Last Titan, much like we weren't necessarily gonna see delves in Midnight. But we delves were something that proved to be pretty popular as a feature of the War Within, and so we're continuing to build. We got a whole bunch of new exciting delves, new delve follower, new delve functionality and whatnot going into Midnight.
Okay. When you picked up
case. Yep.
Yeah. Like, I'm not a delve guy. I'm not going to pretend I am, but
Sure.
they definitely are super successful with members of my team. They do delves exclusively. I wanted to talk to you about picking up Midnight, considering it seems like the World Soul Saga wasn't the initial idea with the War Within coming, and now you've got this World Soul Saga 3 story that you're in the middle of. Was that difficult for you to pick up and say, okay, this is now the middle part of this cake, I need to get involved? And did that create a change of path for you that you had to adjust to?
I don't know if it was building an expansion is always a challenge. There's a lot of work that goes into making an expansion. Luckily, folks here on this team are pretty good at it by this point. There's a lot of people who've built expansions in the past, and so we know what needs to be done. It tends to be a lot of work. This Midnight was a little different, being the second chapter of a saga. We needed to think a lot more about what happened last. And historically, expansions, the opening of it is opening a new book. It's starting a new fantasy. We're going to Pandaria. We're going to Draenor, and so on. And that's not necessarily the case here. Not only is it we are continuing the story that's set up in the War Within, but also specifically, we're not a couple of our zones. We're not going to a new place. We're revisiting some of the older zones. By going to Eversong Woods, going to Zulaman, which is not an older zone, but is an older dungeon, and we're used to that fantasy. So those are some of the wrinkles that went into this process. But by and large, like by the time we've been working started working in earnest on Midnight, the folks who work on creative here, I mentioned Chris Metzen before, but also Maria, a number of other folks who work on the sort of the saga that is the World Soul Saga, had laid down a lot of really awesome groundwork that made sort of my job and the rest of the team's job down the stream a lot easier to say like, oh, cool, this is the story we're telling. All right, let's start building some zones. Let's start building some features, dungeons and raids and whatnot. And then it was a lot of just creative whiteboard work after that.
Okay, that's cool. Can I ask you about raiding? Because as somebody who takes part in casting the Race to World First, we're getting the staggered raid release.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Is that something to do with like checking add-ons and the whole system is working before the big raid comes? Because there's a lot of theories going on right now as to why this staggering is going, or is it story-based? What's the idea there?
Yeah, so for those unaware, haven't been following the details of Midnight, we have 3 raids that are part of our first season, 9 total bosses, and they're split 6, 2, and 1. When the season starts, 2 of those raids, the 6 boss raid, the Void Spire, and the 1 boss raid, the Dreamwell, will be able to. No, so sorry, name escapes me while I'm on live stream, but nevertheless. Dream Rift, there we go. Thank you.
Yep.
Is the second raid that is available, and then a couple weeks later, the March on Addons becomes available. The reason we decided to split up the raids is due to player feedback. This is something that actually came from our encounter team, having built a couple 8-boss raids a couple times in a row. We wanted to mix things up, and we'd heard feedback from players that like, it would be nice to have a breakup, to have some split raids like we have in the past. Going back to that mantra I said of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, doesn't necessarily apply. This is like, yeah, we do want to make sure that we're injecting novelty by changing the formula every once in a while. So this is sort of the idea there. And so the plan was, okay, let's do 2 raids this time. And then as we built it out, one of our lead encounter designers said, actually, I've got an idea. What if we did 3? And so we made it work and found this a way to add the Dream Rift raid in as well. Now, as far as splitting things up kind of time-wise and why they're staggered, this is a function of story. This is because it has nothing to do, like as mentioned, with add-ons. It's more to do with the adoption of story mode raids as something which we really just started dabbling with in the last expansion in the War Within, as a way to take the content that happens in a raid and allow players, even players who don't step into any difficulty of raid, to be able to see the story that happens there. And we saw some really good success with that. A lot of folks choosing to hop into story mode raids and see the story there. And so we said, well, we've got some really cool twists and turns. I should say, for those of you who are looking into like data mining information, which will be coming out, or if you're able to hop in the alpha, if there's reasons we haven't really talked about the boss lists of the story raids we have here, the Void Spire and the March on Addons, and that's because there are some spoilers in terms of who those bosses are. So if you want to if you want to look, go ahead, please hop in and see who you'll be fighting and learn the mechanics and whatnot. But if you want to save yourself some of the story twists and turns, maybe keep those under wraps. And those spoiler bosses have names, which are the final boss is called the Crown of the Cosmos of the Void Spire, specifically so we're not spoiling those who don't want to know who you're actually going to be fighting there. But nevertheless, there's some really cool story opportunities that come from splitting up the story from that first raid, and then some stuff happens, and then we finally have that conclusion or that denouement of 2 additional raid bosses a couple weeks later.
I think stuff happens has been the common thread that has been said to me by so many of you guys. Maria has used it on me so many times. Xal'atath is attacking the Sunwell for reasons, because stuff is going on, and it's all going to work.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that while we are in the closing season of the War Within, the War Within's not over. We're at 11.2.0 right now, and we can expect some 11.2 point somethings to happen. We already know about 11.2.5 coming along the line, and so there will be additional stuff that happens in between even now, and the stuff that you're able to see and start playing in alpha.
Is there something you're really excited about? Is a much more story-focused World of Warcraft, where it's trying to get those players to be like, this story is great, we think it's going to be good, and now to the point where we're staggering raids for story reasons? Are you seeing an uptake in people caring about the spoilers? We want to enjoy this more compared to what we've seen in the past, certainly.
I don't know yet. This sort of putting a spoiler in a raid is new. I'm sort of curious to see how folks respond to that. And this is the type of thing that like we do want to try things which are different, try things that are risky and dangerous to mix up the presentation of a WoW expansion and give people a different experience. And so we're going to see how people respond to this, and maybe what that ends up meaning is some future raids do have more story connotations. Maybe it means is what it means is like no, well, the raids will be more of a spur off the main story. A good example of this was the first raid of last expansion where you're fighting against the Nerubian Queen. The main thread of the story was actually completed in quests when you have Illyria fighting against Xal'atath and whatnot. That was separate from what happened in the raid. The raid was still very important, but it wasn't load-bearing story that led into what happened in Undermine and whatnot. And so we'll see how folks respond to that. I think that we are building a really cool fantasy game, and anytime we can inject some interesting, cool story into that fantasy that gets people excited and invested in the world, invested in the characters, invested in their characters' involvement in it is a positive thing. And so we'll keep shooting for that whenever we can.
So on the other hand, though, we should expect the difficulty across these raids, even while staggered, to be similar. Mythic in the early raids will be similar to the difficulty of Mythic later, even though we've had some gearing up process.
Yeah, this is something we're gonna test out as we move through the testing process as well. So that for that first kind of group of 7 bosses, you will have the 6 bosses of Voidspire, which will have a progression similar to what you would seen in a 8-boss raid in the last couple of expansions or last couple of seasons. That one boss that is in the Dream Rift is going to be somewhere in the middle. Of the 7, maybe it's third or fourth most difficult. We'll see, and we do expect folks who are playing through that season, especially folks who are playing through Race of World first, to want to complete the entirety of those 7 bosses. The latter 2 will be harder, largely because you'll have gear by that point. And so for it to be a satisfying experience, it just doesn't fall over in one pull. You want to have a satisfying number of pulls so that the achievement means something. That will be a bit harder. I would say that first boss of those 2, the one that's testable on Alpha right now, Beleren, would maybe not be as hard as the final boss of Voidspire, but that last one should be the exclamation point at the end of Season 1.
That's very exciting, Paul. Thank you very much. That's great.
Certainly. Yeah.
My last stuff for you before you have to go is about housing. We're planning to have we're going to bring FF14 to WoW. I talked to you about this in Boston. We're going to have DJs that are already preparing. We're having a big party. Some of the things we talked about then were like player limits within then I call them wards, neighborhoods, which are huge. Have we got any idea of what we're going to be allowed to do there? Like, is it going to be limited to like 60 people or several hundred? I know it's a selfish question, but I'm curious for the type of events we could do in this new environment.
We're going to be relying on you and your community to help us test this, to figure out what the limit is before the servers light on fire.
Oh, yeah.
And really that is sort of the limit here. The philosophical approach to housing is and always has been since it kind of came up was just let players do what they think is fun. This applies to the way that we allow decor, which is throw out all the rules. You can place things wherever you want, clip it into a wall, rotate it, flip it, grow it, shrink it, float it in the middle of the air, and turn off gravity doesn't really matter. Allowing players that flexibility to do things, some might say people are going to build the ugliest, crazy houses because you're giving them too much control. But with that power comes the ability to build truly majestic, awesome, wonderful things.
100%.
I think the same, generally applies to like the social structures in neighborhoods as well, that like we wouldn't artificially limit the number of folks that can hang out in a house, in a neighborhood or whatnot. Much like is the case with a shard in the outdoor world or in a city where we're largely limited by performance. If enough people show up that you're dealing with slideshows or dealing with disconnects or anything like that, then absolutely that's not a positive experience for anyone. But beyond that, party on.
Is that ever solvable? I have brought it up with Ian in the past, and it seems to be an issue that's like, will we ever get to the stage where we can have a couple of thousand people playing smoothly, or is it just the internet just can't support it?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because that's the other side of this equation too, is engineers working on the problem to make so that the netcode, the structure of the game itself is able to support more people. And you've seen this as a natural evolution of just computing power in general, but also improvements to our engine, where look at the ringing of the gong the first time versus when it happened in classic later. Yes, exactly. And you can have so much more people and so much more performance. And so this continues to be a thing that we want to make sure that our game has high performance and can handle more characters in one place. And so we do continue to work on this, not just for players, but for monsters and spells and cool things happening.
Oh, sick. One last question, if I can, Paul. This has been requested by everybody who I showed housing to today. Guild housing, which creates off subdivisions. But a lot of people asking, is that dictated by the guild master as to whether it'll be the alliance or the horde area? And is it possible to sort of lasagna them? So if you've got a guild that is greater than 50, which creates many subdivisions, some of them are horde ones, some of them are alliance ones because they prefer that aesthetic. Or does it all have to be, oh, your guild master is horde, then it's all Razorwind, and that's it?
That's a great question. The structure is currently the latter right now, which is if you have a Razorwind neighborhood, then individual partitions of that neighborhood are all Razorwind. This is one of those things about housing, though, where we sort of built the system and then share it with the community to see what they think. And there's a million different cool ideas. There's several thousand cool ideas that come out of this. This is actually, I think, one of them that I can see this as a natural evolution of if there's a desire for large guilds to have multiple subdivisions of their neighborhood, which are of different districts. Why not? It's just a matter of taking the time to build that out and prioritizing that against the 999 other really cool ideas that we're looking to build into housing.
Oh, that's superb. Okay, my time is up with you. Always wonderful talking to you, Paul. Have a great day. I know you're doing lots of stuff today, but appreciate your time every time.
Thank you for the great questions. Thank you for your community for playing the game, and look forward to seeing you in Alpha and Midnight.
Bye-bye.
So long.